verse number 20. This world is real as music. Other than this, the world has no reality. There is all such that people say is without reflection, even if to a numbskull it appears to be a snake. Will a fresh flower garland ever become a serpent? Commentary. Occasionally, this world we inhabit will appear to be very dark. We feel like running away from it. We think that somewhere there could be another world, one where everything is as it should be. I should run away from this wretched world to a more spiritual place. With these kinds of thoughts, people have made conceptual hells and heavens. They comfort themselves by thinking that, as miserable as they are now, someday they will go to heaven and everything will be set right. At the same time, a lot of their motivation comes from the threat of a hell somewhere. Even great philosophers like Plato thought of a world of intelligibles where all the prototypes are, in contrast to this world of shadow, the shadows of the archetypes. Narayana Guru says, this kind of duality is unwarranted. It cannot be justified. What is only this world. It is how we understand the world that makes all the difference. Either you can think of it as a sea of tears full of misery, or you can see in it the possibility of actualizing all the dearest values. We have seen certain analogies in the previous verses, like the transient waves on the surface of the ocean, which, when you dive deep into it, is found to be a repository of sunken treasures, or a desert land where the passing moments are like meaningless particles of sand, but when you gain a better understanding, every grain becomes a priceless jewel. After examining these analogies, we had a closer look at life and saw that we have a double arrangement within our system for knowing things. From the side of the world come certain forms of energy, such as light or sound waves, to stimulate our sensory system, while from the side of our psyche, there has to be a self-luminous consciousness to lend itself to be modified by the stimulation coming from the external world. This modification does not happen haphazardly. It is manipulated by the latent urges in us. Time here has a great significance. A certain impression that has been lying buried in us for several years or even many lives becomes potent to take over the present moment, synchronizing the light from within and the stimulation from outside in order to produce a certain effect. That effect can be pleasurable or painful. It can be attractive or threatening. Thus, this complex situation is structured like a pearl in which there is both light and darkness. The pearl has a kind of smoky translucency as well as a general opacity, even as it reflects pure light. So like the modalities of nature, sattva, rajas and tamas, we can see in it transparency, translucency and opacity. We can see a light which gladdens our hearts, as well as a mystery which makes it difficult to evaluate its full worth. So, after giving a structure to the awareness of each passing event, we have seen the possibility of converting every experience into a living moment of priceless worth. This should be clearly in our mind when we consider the present verse. The analogy given here is of a snake and a garland made of fresh flowers of great beauty. A man walks into his dimly lit bedroom. He is tired and wants to go to bed and rest. Reaching out his hand, he touches something cold and wet. He is greatly startled. In the dim light, he sees something long and thin with dots on it, like a coiled up snake, and nearly faints with terror. Then he turns on the light and sees it is a garland, made of the finest flowers dipped in rose water. It is fragrant, cooling, and very beautiful. Each flower has been specially chosen and arranged with great artistic skill as an offering of love. Nothing is more valuable to a person than life itself. When the nature of the garland was hidden away for a moment, it appeared to be something which could take life away. Once it is clear there is no threat, however, the garland only enhances the value of one's own life. Dear life and the garland are two positive values which become integrated into one sense of endearment. Pavlov's dogs were conditioned to salivate whenever a bell was rung. Like that, we are conditioned to many threats and attractions from our surroundings. The Guru specifically uses the word ulagar here, which means those who are conditioned by the pains and pleasures of this world. In another of his works, Advaita Deepika, or the Lamp of Non-Dual Wisdom, he says, "To the wise man the world has substance, and mind stuff represents the value form of delight." This is contrary to what most Vedantins say. Usually they think that this world is unreal, but Narayana Guru asserts this is the only reality, there is no other. Ramana Maharishi had a kind of sarcoma, a very painful form of cancer. His left side was tearing away from his body. Thousands of people were sitting around in deep despair. They themselves had no cancer. They were not suffering from anything physical. Only one man had this dreadful disease, but there was no joy in anyone. All were very sad. Even the ashram peacock's cry was like a terrible lamentation, as though it were voicing the anguish of all the thousands of people sitting there. Among them were people from America, Japan, all over the world. There were Hindus and Muslims, Catholics and Protestants, children and old folk, beggars and millionaires, heads of government, doctors. This huge variety of all kinds of people were united in having a very painful time. Maharishi's sister came to his bed and started screaming. She was crying aloud. Maharishi looked at her and said, "What is the matter?" She said, it's you, you are going away." She had no disease, but she was the one who was crying, and he was sitting there, serene, calm, unaffected. As she cried, he added, "Going? Where? Where can I go? And where is to go?" He did not see any place to go, nor did he see anyone going anywhere. This is the only place. There is nowhere else to go. When I was a student, I felt very miserable. The whole college situation seemed meaningless. So I wrote a letter to my principal stating I was going away. He sent back a note asking me to come and see him before I left. When I went to his office, he invited me to lunch with his wife and him. He said, "It's a fine thing that you want to leave on finding that this place is not meaningful to you anymore. That's very good. But tell me, when you go away, are you going to take your mind with you also? Or are you going to leave that here?" "Surely I take my mind with me wherever I go," I said. "That means you will be taking the same sorrow, sadness, suspicion, doubts, misery, everything with you. It will be the same in the place where you go, because you are taking all this with you. If you can leave your mind here and run away from it, fine." This is so true. I get letters almost every day from people who say that they want to get away, to run away. Go away where? We think all the misery is because we are with certain people and certain situations. When we move away, it will again be a wonderful world. If you can create a wonderful world in another place, you can create it wherever you are now too. Ultimately, what is? Only the light from within you, which is illuminating your life. What is illuminated becomes colored, darkened by the venom that comes from within your own previous conditionings. You become entangled in your conditioned misconceptions. But if we look back to the source of illumination, we become less affiliated with the murkiness around us. It's up to us to make our world miserable or beautiful. When the shift is more and more on the sensory side, we are drifting into the shadow. When the emphasis is more and more on the spirit, we are reclaiming and rehabilitating ourselves in the values that are imperishable. We can be assailed by doubt, fear, a sense of strangeness, difficulty in communication, and lack of understanding of the motivations of people. Here we are removed from the center, the spirit. We have to reconcile with the fact that on the sensory side of life, the physical, biological aspect of life, there are inevitable changes. There are transformations such as birth and death, growth and decay. We cannot do anything about them. They have to be accepted. Once they are accepted, what is left can be absolutely beautiful. You can also find beauty in the changes themselves. I've been reading about the life of Karl Jaspers, a man who was very sickly from childhood. He was always threatened by heart disease and bronchiectasis, but he was able to accept them, saying, "These are my limitations. I have to go to bed every now and then, but then I can again get up and work." He saw the bright side of life, the truth. First, he saw the truth as a scientist would see it. He studied jurisprudence, then medicine, followed by psychiatry, the methodology of doing research, and the pure philosophy of life. Finally, he became a full-fledged philosopher. He did all this by always putting the bright side of life first, while his diseases were pushed to the background. Jasper's life was very beautiful. Despite his condition, he lived a rich life for almost 80 years, learning to see the world as a wonderful reality of great beauty. There have been many people who were even more unfortunate than Jaspers. Friedrich Nietzsche, for instance. He had migraine headaches, a very small percentage of eyesight, with terrible pain and spasms all over the body. He couldn't eat any spices. The slightest trace would give him stomach cramps and make him vomit. Often he couldn't sleep. His doctors didn't want him to use his eyes for reading, but he would sit 10 hours at a stretch and write before he was pulled down by his ailments. Great pain and torment filled his life, but he treated it as a shadow behind and put his own light before him. He drew great strength from this light and accomplished a great deal. When you consider examples like these, do you realize how fortunate we are? Our plight is not so terrible. We have comparatively much better health and faculties. Our medical care is humane and even correct most of the time. Our food and the comfort of our surroundings exceed even the wildest dreams of medieval kings. Where is there cause for despair? The passing moments of our lives are to be made lively and rich. One thing I have learned in my life is that the moment that comes will not come again. It's gone. You can see the moment approaching, receive it with open arms, glorify it by enriching it with your joy. Find a new value, a new sense of direction in life. Have a renewed sense of wonder. Thus that moment becomes eternalized in your life. It is a moment to be remembered and to be proud that you could live it so well. Then you can move on to the next moment. This one has already been immortalized in you. What you have achieved in that moment is your eternal repository. Wonderful. You feel fulfilled. You are filled with gratitude. Oh, I lived this moment so wonderfully. This is your own life in this very world with all these amenities given to you in the here and now. With this understanding, you are eager to race to the next moment because it is going to be wonderful, going to be beautiful. It will yield so much. You see the promise of the future already in it. It's going to be still more wonderful than what you have already lived. Then you pass on to the next with joy and grace. The day opens up with such beauty, such promise. There is nothing like life, nothing like this world. A world where you can make friends, a world where you can create beautiful things, a world where you can share beauty with others, and where you can make others part of your own self. A world where there is such an abundance of love and sharing. The only thing is that you shouldn't drift into darkness. Don't look at the world as something horrid, but as beautiful, divine. Every bit of it. Then we know we are the creators of our own fate, not through this individual ego with all its vagaries, but through a full affiliation with the eternal, supernatural light that enriches everything. Only then will we have the strength to become masters of the situation. The whole beauty of creation, the beauty that has painted the petals of the flowers, which has given shape to the butterflies and birds, which makes the mountains look awe-inspiring and the oceans look vast, which makes the clouds float so gracefully overhead. This is where we find our true freedom. You belong to the same overmind of beauty, not with your ego, but with your spirit. Participation in it will reveal to you the divine artist in you, the divine musician in you, the divine intelligence, the divine creator, the divine lover, the divine unifier, the divine peacemaker within you. It's such a blessing to be in this world, to be born here and to live here. This world of ours will fall away just like a candle burning out. But before it burns out, the candle gives off a lot of light. What does it matter that it is eventually extinguished? It has lived its moment of light. We live surrounded by smoke and darkness. Make up your mind that you will live this day, each coming moment, in all its worth and beauty, and that you will share it with all. This is the great teaching the Guru offers us. And the free translation of this verse is, this world has no other reality. People who say it has are wanting in sufficient reason. Even if a dimwit mistakes a garland of fresh flowers for a terrifying snake, does that make it one?